Okay, let's get into your article. You wrote this article, Bitcoin's eating the world, famous, follows on from a famous quote, the software's eating the world. Yep. What was the background? Why did you want to write this specifically? What realization did you come to?
Yeah, I mean, it's really a thesis statement that I came to really like 4 years ago when I first kind of got into Bitcoin, but especially a couple of years ago when I started making contact with the 1031 guys. Was just that if what we believe about Bitcoin ends up being true, and that it is the best money, then it will inexorably achieve adoption in some form or fashion. We can talk about what that ultimately looks like, but it should achieve essentially worldwide adoption. I think most Bitcoiners can understand that and generally agree with that in some way. And I even think a lot of capital allocators can kind of understand that logic. They may not agree necessarily that Bitcoin is the best money. They may have questions about, well, why is it Bitcoin and not something else? But they can kind of get on board with like something being broken in the traditional fiat system and there needing to be some kind of solution. But then a lot of people, both Bitcoiners and not, don't take the next step to saying like, if that's true, like let's just assign some probability to it and say that that's true. There are meaningful derivative implications for companies that are providing products and services that will enable that growth of Bitcoin adoption. If there are 8 billion people ultimately using Bitcoin in some way, there will necessarily be massive industries built up around enabling that. And then existing industries themselves will also have to meaningfully adapt to that reality.
Adapt or die.
Yeah, exactly. Because money is, half of every transaction. Every economic interaction at virtually any scale is downstream of money and needs to leverage money in some way. And if Bitcoin becomes the global reserve currency and essentially, the apex predator of money that we expect it to be, existing industries that currently have nothing to do with Bitcoin will have to reckon with that reality and adopt tools and services to utilize it, and also probably see various elements of their businesses transformed by that fact. So basically what I was kind of getting at was I think there's a tendency, even among Bitcoiners, to look at Bitcoin companies as kind of like a cottage industry. It's kind of like, a cute little set of like, investments here, investments there. There's like, this Lightning companies, they're kind of cool. They're doing something. And like this financial services company, like I like them, I use them, whatever. But I don't think people like fully understand that like if we're right about what Bitcoin is going to be, then it's going to be far from, Bitcoin companies will be far from a cottage industry. It'll be basically every company, right? So the surface area of kind of what's investable as a Bitcoin infrastructure investor just gets bigger and bigger every year. We expand out in these concentric circles from like financial services and payments, kind of the logical stuff, to like oil and gas, as it leverages kind of Bitcoin mining, to consumer applications. We're seeing that maybe with like Primal, with Fold, some other companies in our portfolio that don't actually have anything to do with Bitcoin or didn't initially, and came to us because they kind of saw an opportunity to integrate it in some way. And so you just kind of, I think we'll see a lot more of those as we go, as Bitcoin adoption increases. And so just kind of waking people up to that reality, both like capital allocators that we talk to, but also just anyone who's interested in Bitcoin in general. Like there's a whole set of derivative implications that you should be paying attention to if you think Bitcoin is going to become, what we think it can be.
So I'm there now. I think it will. But I always had some doubts. I was like, yeah, but really, can we get there? Because when you explain it, when you rationally think it through, a decentralized form of money, which we've never had before, invented by an anonymous guy, that is operated and managed by a set of these nodes that exist around the world, and we have these like little mining operations or these massive mining farms. It can be a container in the jungle in Brazil. It can be a massive rack in, say, Texas, kind of cheerleaded by a bunch of kind of degenerate outcasts. When you rationally think it through, you're like, yeah, but it's not really going to do this. Like in your head, I had some doubts earlier on, but now I'm fully in. I mean, Danny beat me to it. Danny was more bullish ahead of me. But I'm fully convinced now. Mm-hmm. Like, I'm there. You are, aren't you?
100%.
But why? Why is it? Like, why is it happening? Why will this happen?
Yeah, I think it comes down to Bitcoin being superior money. And I don't think that it's possible to insulate yourself from the consequences of what that means if you're a self-interested economic actor. It's, I kind of, in the piece, walk through just like a summary table of all of the, characteristics that make Bitcoin superior money on pretty much any dimension you can think of. It is. We have a thesis. I think anyone who holds Bitcoin has this thesis in some way. We certainly have it at 1031 that ultimately all monetary goods will converge to one, because everyone has to constantly face an A/B test of, do I want to hold Bitcoin or something else? And if in every iteration of that A/B test, Bitcoin wins out, you won't want to hold 3 other monies or 5 other monies or 10 other monies that are inferior. You'll want to just hold Bitcoin. You'll want to just hold cash balances in Bitcoin. And you can do that permissionlessly. You can do that fairly cheaply. You can access it from anywhere in the world. Obviously, there are frictions in different countries and different jurisdictions that we can get into, but the long-term result is kind of unavoidable if we're right about Bitcoin being the superior money that it is. And I think you've seen historical examples of that play out across history. Bitcoin Standard, Saifedean goes through those in great detail. But I just think it's very difficult to envision a world where Bitcoin continues to do what it has done and continues to maintain all the characteristics that it has had, and doesn't just achieve more and more adoption in a one-way function year over year. Once you start adopting it, you don't go back. You can see that in the HODL waves, right? You can see everyone who is adopting it, like, anecdotally knows that's the case. We can see it to some extent on on-chain data. And
love the HODL wave. Yeah,
absolutely. It's key analysis.
I've seen why it wins in a live environment in the fiat world. Where I was out in Lebanon a few months ago making a film.
Yep.
And in Lebanon, it's essentially a failed state. And the Lebanese local currency, the lira, I think it is, or is it Lebanese pound? I can't remember. I think it's the lira, is a shitcoin. It just constantly devalues. Similar in Argentina with the peso, right? But what happens in Lebanon is everyone accepts the dollar.
Right.
But they don't have coins. Okay, so they only have the note dollars. And so they give you your change, your coin change, in the Lebanese lira. And so what happens is when anyone goes to pay, they get out their 2 wads of notes, which is their dollars and big wad of the Lebanese lira, and they start paying with that first, and then they make up the difference with the dollar because they know it's a shit coin. Get rid of the lira and hold on to the top. Is it the lira?
I don't know. Yeah. It's so inefficient, though, that system.
Yeah, but it's proven to you. It's that what do they call it?
Gresham's law.
Yeah, Gresham's law. Like
Lebanese pound.
Yeah, Lebanese pound. That you get rid of the worst money first.
Right.
Yeah, and so I've seen that, and then you experience it in your own life. Me and Danny were always like playing Bitcoin games. It was like, I'm not going to tell them all, but like, how do I not spend my Bitcoin? Right. If I do this, I can either short the pound, the dollar, the Australian dollar, but we're always trying to do that. You come to that realization, I've got to own this shit. Takes a lot of people. It takes people a long time to get to that point. It's a real test of you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that's fair.
What do we got here, Danny?
This was just the HODL waves you were talking about.
It's getting tighter.
Yeah. No, I think it's right. It's not something that happens overnight. It is a paradigm shift. It is, I think, a point I make in the article here is like, it's also not super intuitive. Like when you first come to it, and that's a lot of the reason that people say you need like multiple touch points with Bitcoin before you take it seriously and want to start adopting it. But that is also the fact that it's not necessarily at a protocol level, at like the barest level, the most intuitive thing is also like an argument for, not an argument against its quality as money, but an argument for the products and services and companies and applications that can be built up and will be built up to make it more intuitive. I reference in this article I make a lot of parallels to the internet. There's the famous Today Show clip, which is now like hilarious today, right? Of Katie Couric and the other hosts of the Today Show in like 1994 asking their producer like, what is internet? Not like what is the internet? Asking what the @ symbol is, right? And it was completely foreign to like fairly like mainstream, well-educated, wealthy people at the pinnacle of Western society, sitting in a studio in Manhattan, right? And you could look at that and say, well, obviously, like this thing is like hyper unintuitive. Who's ever going to use this? It seems like it's just for criminals. Like I don't like even get the mechanics behind it. Like why would I want it? And then like less than 15 years later, everyone's walking around with one of these. Right. There's the classic quote that we overestimate technology's potential in the short term and underestimate in the long term. It's a bit of a cliche, but like it's proven exactly right with the internet. And I think that'll be the case with Bitcoin too.